Welcome back, everyone, to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this show is for you if you're interested in reconnecting to nature and your natural state of being or your higher state of being. And this episode, for example, we touch on things what I think are some kind of superpower that our friend Linton has.
Yeah, so Linton is the brother of my dear friend Chloe. I met him up at the LFM property a couple of years back. And he's just such a wealth of knowledge and information, and he's worked in so many different fields and modalities. And yeah, I think I can speak for both of us when I say that this was one of our all-time favorite conversations and episodes to record.
Yeah.
I learned so much just chatting to Linton, and yeah, I just love all these little tidbits of information that he has, and he has so much experience in everything that he speaks about. So, and this is a really interactive episode. So for anyone listening, highly recommend jumping on our video platforms to watch this one. Linton gives us a demonstration of dowsing. He shows us the structure he built on his dad's property, incorporating sacred geometry and permaculture and ley lines. And then he also showed us his stonemasonry skills, which are phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely world class. And he'll explain about, why it's so unique what he does or has done. It's mind blowing. I didn't know people still made stuff that way outside of, secret stone making societies or whatever.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, jump on our link trees in the show notes and you'll find all our video platforms there. So we're on Rumble, YouTube, Telegram, and now our video episodes are also up on Spotify.
Yeah. And the show is brought to you by Natural Art Form. It's supported by our listeners. We have a product that I've used for sunburn that I've reclassed as a skin repair and sunburn recovery. It's called Regenerate. And this thing, at first, it was just aloe and DMSO. Now I've added an extra dose of comfrey to it, and it is amazing. It's amazing for repairing the skin. We've used it for things like eczema and psoriasis, bug bites. It's a kind of an all-around rescue remedy. This one does not have magnesium like our other products do, so it's safe for eczema and psoriasis. And so that's available in Australia. We just rebranded that and are relaunching it this week. And then our other update for our products is we have a new scent of deodorant available in Australia.
It's my new favorite, guys. It's such a beautiful blend.
Yeah, so the scent combination is rosewood, lavender, lemongrass. There's a little bit of rosemary and ylang ylang under it. And the reason I love this deodorant so much, it was an accidental discovery. I was out camping one time without deodorant. I had Alleviate with me. Back then it was called Leg Day. But it has magnesium salts in it, a pretty good dose of it. And the salts will actually kill bacteria. And I tried it out. It actually reversed my body odor. And I hadn't showered for several days at that point. That was outstanding. I've since tried it on my feet wearing work boots, doing construction jobs. Still works a dime. Is that a saying?
I can.
It works a dime.
I'm not sure. We don't have dimes here, so we'll just say that it's an American saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can totally vouch for that. Like, I've tried almost all of the natural deodorants under the sun over the last 20 years. And this is the only one I've ever used that I can put on once in the morning and I don't have to keep reapplying. The other day I was sweating all day, and afternoon, sniff test, no smell whatsoever. So it is hands down the best deodorant I've ever used. And we often get that feedback from our customers as well.
Yeah. I've had 20-year veterans of people that have used every natural deodorant under the sun. So it is humbling and inspiring to me that this little tweak that I've done is actually sort of innovating the field with
Absolutely.
this,
I've never come across a magnesium salt deodorant before.
Yeah. I call it a salt cream deodorant, and I love it. If you're in the States, those will be coming soon. We're working on it, but we've got to boost our sales in the States, and so we can buy labels and jars and bottles for the new products. So our flagship product, Alleviate, which is also, it's the one that's stocked at Barbara O'Neill's retreat in Australia called Misty Mountain. Alleviate is available in the US. We manufacture it in small batches there as well, and we ship worldwide from the US. And that's an amazing product. It replaced ibuprofen for me, for body aches and stuff like that. It's a topical anti-inflammatory. The oils in it are known for their healing benefits, things like comfrey, arnica, calendula, St. John's wort. I blend them together with magnesium, a magnesium hexahydrate, which is very absorbable. And people use it for arthritis, all kinds of things. So check that out if you want a game changer for your medicine cabinet for pains and even workout recovery.
And for our listeners, we offer you 10% off your first order using the code NATURALAF10. So that applies worldwide. It doesn't matter where you are. So you can definitely use that to check out our products. And if not, just jump on our website and join our mailing list. We just sent out our first newsletter ever. So we'll be doing that on a monthly basis. We'll be sending out a newsletter with updates, exclusive discounts, and just letting you know what's going on with the podcast, with business. You can catch all of our happenings there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll get right into the episode with Linton, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Enjoy. Today we welcome Linton, autodidact and polymath, who is on a journey of lifelong learning, research, and communication and transmission of that knowledge. He currently works across multiple disciplines, including sacred geometry-based graphic design, stonemasonry, permaculture design and landscaping, energy work and clearings, and music. His main focus this year has been working on 2 albums under the artist name Primordia, all in 432 Hz and alternative tunings. During and post-COVID, Linton saw a real need to build community amongst like-minded people. So he assumed that role with others. And through 10 DOFs, for anyone outside of Australia, they're just music events, in 2022.
Outdoor dance parties. Yeah.
Or dance parties, yeah. Mainly as a way for those who were segregated and discriminated against to come together, stay sane, talk openly, and engage in group healing. Post-COVID, he has reverted to his default of doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that on a semi-regular basis. Linton loves building community and being a connector for like-minded others. Nature, the cosmos, and other enlightened beings are where he draws his power. He feels poised to integrate all of his knowledge and experiences into grander projects and outcomes moving into the future to serve the highest good of the collective. And just quickly before we jump in, just for anyone that doesn't know what an autodidact or polymath is, an autodidact is basically just someone who's self-taught, and a polymath is someone who knows a lot of stuff about a lot of different things, which is literally, that's Linton in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, first we always want to kick this off with just a little bit of your journey. So if you just want to share to start off, like, I guess the most major life experiences, the most significant life experiences that you've had that have sort of led you to where you are today. And you might want to go into a little bit of how you grew up or whatever. You have the floor.
Cool. I guess I'll start with how I grew up. So obviously, you know, my sister. So we grew up and lived all around Australia, kind of a pretty unsettled childhood. And basically my dad was looking for work, either transfers, promotions, things like that, or changing careers. So, we just followed him around Australia. I grew up in, let me think about this. I was born in Victoria, started schooling in New South Wales, did most of it in Western Australia, and finished high school in Queensland and university in Queensland. Wow. So lived in like almost average a school per year. And there's 2 ways you can go about that. Like, you can either, you know, get used to that dynamic, or like me, I was more reserved and I was just like, became withdrawn. And depending on the school and the dynamic that I was in, I was either like the reject outcast kid, or I was like in the middle, or I was a popular kid. So I kind of had a little bit of a dose of all those different dynamics depending on the school. So that was cool. I mean, I lived in a lot of places before I turned, 17. Like, I'm very grateful for that. And that's that. And my journey, what started me on my journey? So I studied IT, did my bachelor's at IT at Bond University in Queensland on the Gold Coast. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to get an academic scholarship, but it came at a cost. I gave myself depression in high school trying to get that. And anyway, I deprived myself of an adolescence. I was just hitting the books too hard. And anyway, so I was taking Roaccutane as well, which is an acne thing, and I was looking at the long list on the inserts of side effects. I was like, depression. Oh yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay, whatever. And then it just hit me. So anyway, long story short, I didn't really feel like I belonged at university. Like I was most of the Australian people there were on scholarships like myself, but otherwise it was like 2/3 internationals and mostly rich kids. So I kind of didn't really feel like I fitted in. But I'm grateful for that experience. Like I kind of have definitely, gone both sides of the fence in many areas of life. I've worked on, building sites, and then I've done corporate jobs, and so, mixed with, the richer people and the poorer people. So it's kind of, I like to sort of think I can get along with most people. So anyway, digression, but like at uni anyway, I was a bit lost, I was a bit depressed, and my little ritual for doing that was to I lived on campus, and it was to go to like there's canals around Bonn University, and I used to go to the deepest part of nature on campus, which was backing onto the canals, and I used to just cry for like, I don't know, an hour. Anyway, I received like a download, a transmission when I was doing that. I got an overwhelming feeling of euphoria, and I just got a telepathic communication. It just said, you cannot have a career in IT. This technology will be used to control humanity in the future. And that was when I was 17. So I was 17 in my whole first year of university. I was 18 actually for the rest of it. I just turned 19 just as I graduated. So I was very young, didn't know what I wanted to do, right? But anyway, I got that transmission, and I was like, wow, that's weird. And I've since had other telepathic connections from off-planet, shall we say, with other things. That's another story, but the same thing happens. I get a feeling of euphoria, something communicates with me, and then I get like a download and just like a knowing. So, and finding out about my cosmic heritage has been better for me about understanding all that and blah, blah, blah. So, ever since then, I realized I couldn't have a career in IT. I never did really. I did graphic design and web design, like freelance here and there. I still do that. But I just didn't have anything to confirm, technology would be used to control humanity, blah, 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 because the internet was barely a thing. Mobile phones were barely a thing back in 2002 when this happened, and I was 17. Yeah. So anyway, fast forward to today, and we can see the effects of technology and, people's usage of it.
Totally.
Yeah, how interesting. That's so crazy.
How old are you now? Like 38, 39?
39. I'll be turning 40 end of this month, 26th of this month.
Oh, so, amazing.
Yeah, we're about the same age. And I remember when internet became a thing, we had our first computer with web access, and we would take turns, me and my three brothers, like surfing the web and going to mostly music sites, like our favorite bands and stuff, and had no idea that it would turn into this. Now we're working with AI every day, or it's out there doing God knows what. Yeah. And your premonition was spot on.
Yeah. And can I just ask, Linton, so when you talk about like learning more about your cosmic heritage, because I guess just explain that concept for people that don't get it firstly, but then how have you done that? So
basically, have you heard of star seeds? Yeah. So I never really resonated with that. I never really looked into it until I was at a dowsing earth divining convention that a friend told me to go to. And basically, I caught the eye of the presenter and this other older guy. I was the youngest person there. Everyone else was like over 60. And they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, this is the dowsing divining thing. Is like, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, welcome. I'm like, so anyway, and we had an intermission, and this older guy turns around, and I could tell he wanted to talk to me. I was like, and I wasn't really feeling that social, but in the end, I was like, all right, cool, let's have a chat. Anyway, he's like, do you mind, your heart is opening up to your heart chakra is opening up to me now. Do you mind if I do a healing on you? I was like, yeah, cool. So he removed this entity from my heart chakra, and he's like, and your guides want you to know that you have Andromedan heritage. They really want you to get in contact with you, and they want you to know that they approve of your journey, and they're really looking forward to work with you in the future. And I was like, all right, cool. And and then I just went on a massive rabbit hole about Andromeda and all that sort of thing. And I had like quite a dark winter. Like I've had 2 in a row since I broke up with my ex of 13 years. I haven't had a steady partner since then. So I live in a house with no insulation, and like I kind of went into a hole and worked on these albums this year, and I was forced to go inwards, and I came out of this winter with a lot of psychic abilities that I didn't have. So like including like going into my own past lives, other people's past lives, talking to my guides, doing emotional healings on people, which I didn't know I could do, and that's new to me, so I'm still developing that. So, I just, came out of winter with that. And so I've been actively, when I'm more centered and all that, talking with my guides and learning to trust this intuitive voice in my head that's popping in, because apparently they were trying to get in contact with me for like a year and a half. And I didn't pick up what they were putting down, in the sense that I just have, like, in my own voice, in my head, my name pop up, Linton. I'm like, why am I saying my own name in my head? This is weird. This never happened before. Little did I know that was their way of trying to get in contact with me. But I was like, hold on, if you can say Linton in my voice, in my own head, why can't you say Linton? This is your guides. We want to, so I had to do a bit of work. But so, yeah, that's kind of how I found out about that. And I've been meeting other people from Andromeda. Apparently I've had more lives on Andromeda than I have on planet Earth. I've had 243 lives on this, apparently, from what I've been able to work out. So anyway, but more on Andromeda than planet Earth. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I love that too, because I think I've definitely had that experience, not with I don't get downloads and that. I mean, not in the same way that you've explained or other people have explained. But even just tapping in, and I think a lot of people have gone through this and are going through this, especially at this point in time that we're in, where we're just learning how to listen to our intuition, because I think we've been so conditioned out of listening to those inner voices, or when things are coming through, and whether it's beings from other planets or guides or source, God, whatever it is, I think, we've been so conditioned out of listening to that and shutting it off and kind of being oh, that's just me. Why am I saying that? Because I used to be like that. That's just me talking to myself.
Yeah, second guessing stuff. And interesting, when I went down the rabbit hole of star seeds and stuff, just reading the YouTube comments, apparently at this point in time, it seems to be common for people to have another person channeling and doing a healing on them and telling them about their cosmic heritage. I was just reading in the comments I found out from a healing. This guy told me, he channeled that my guides want to get in contact with me. So I was like, whoa, that seems to be, that was a common thing that I found.
Yeah. Not surprising. I think we're definitely in a transitional point in time right now, and there's lots of different things happening in the cosmology, even just the most basic one I think that most people know about, not basic, but probably the more popular thing that people know about is that we're moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Now, the transition period, you can't put, they don't know how long it's, how many years, but roughly each age is about 2,100 years. And we're at that point now where we're transitioning. And I mean, you can feel it. And then there's other stuff going on. Actually, maybe you might be able to shed a bit of light on so what I've experienced in the last few months, and I think you have too, there's been a lot of really intense energy. We've also noticed, lots of people, we've heard there's been a lot of deaths, so there seems to be a lot of souls leaving the earth, and also lots of people getting sick at the same time. Now, I've heard this before, but I've only just recently started experiencing this as the sickness being kind of an upgrade. And it's kind of when you're upgrading your energy, your body kind of detoxes because it can't hold the lower stuff anymore. And so lots of people getting sick, lots of souls seem to be leaving the earth, and a lot of this really intense energy. Can you shed some more light on that kind of stuff, what's going on right now?
There's various collectives of people doing work in that realm. I mean, I haven't looked into it's going to happen this date and all that sort of thing. I definitely feel something changing, and it's not an accident where I live. So where I am right now is the intersection of two ley lines, right? So there's one that runs directly through me, and there's one that runs across, right through where I make music. It goes right through my workstation, right? And right here where this laptop is sitting, this is a vortex, right? And I was able to work out that the people that built this house, and this house has a lot of history, it's a long story, but they built this house around this room knowing that this energy was here. And so I live right opposite a Chinese Zen Buddhist temple. And when I first moved here, I was like, oh, wow, I'm glad that the Chinese are here because they don't mess around when it comes to earth energies. They know where the harmonic places are, right? So I was like, ooh. And so there's a massive synchronicity about where I live. I sort of got a bit of a download that I'm here to help anchor the grid with other people That's kind of why I'm sticking around in Melbourne. I've gotten that from others. People have had dreams about me doing stuff and whatever and told me about it, and then I've had little intuitions here and there. So, there's a lot of people that are doing sonic gridding, as in going out with a guitar or whatever instrument and going to a sacred site or whatever and playing with intention. And wherever I'm making music, I'm always making 4-3-2 with the base level of healing, and I'm sort of actively pumping it along these lines and out through this grid. And plenty of other people around the world are doing it. So we're all, actively starting to get a bit more conscious about that sort of thing. So,
Yes. That's fascinating. I was thinking about this last night before I fell asleep. I was like, because always in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is a very different world from where I came from. I grew up, pretty Christian, pretty basic, but I was always open to like, what's really behind the veil? How does this stuff really work? How does this world really work? And I got interested into, sky clock and astrology from Crow 777. I love the way that he described it. He was a former Marine, which kind of opens me up to stuff because I was former military. But for the people that might be skeptical about, one, the existence of ley lines and what they're like, how people talk about them, because there's a lot of knowledge and information about that I feel like is across the veil for most people. So what are some prominent, maybe there's some landmarks that are on ley lines and some stories around that, or like, how do we know these things exist? And because I know they exist, but what are some obvious, or maybe not obvious, but powerful ways to kind of interact with them or experience them?
So different cultures, cross-culturally, humanity has recognized the existence of these things. So the Chinese call them dragon lines, the indigenous call them song lines, the Native Americans call them spirit lines, Europeans call them ley lines. So we've had this interaction over the course of our history, and all government buildings are situated on them. All churches are situated on them. Like religion and government is situated on them, and not in the best way. So,
Sure.
I went to Canberra and I documented the ley line there, and where our Parliament House is. There's a hill behind it with a tower that exactly aligns with the tower on Parliament House, and then there's this like plinth of this octagonal, a black stone. Can't remember what it is, and you could just see it. It's just straight up there. So like, basically, a lot of people are interacting with them without knowing they are. So obviously, when I did the reading at your place, when I was up a couple of months ago, your mum and dad and other people were saying, oh, this is where I usually do this and that. And I was drawn to this place. So a lot of people, we intuitively know, oh, this is the best place to relax, or this is the best place to sleep. Not always, obviously. Not everyone has different layers of sensitivity or not. And we can all develop that to varying degrees if we're conscious of it. And I don't know, does that answer the question, or should I keep going?
Yeah. I mean, you could probably expand on that a little bit more, but I'll tell a brief story. So down by our dam that goes down the hill behind us, recently there was the ladies did a women's circle for Alexa's mother's birthday, and it was right on the spot where I always go down and I speak to the water, and I go down there and I'll do hape, which is like a powdered tobacco snuff, a shamanic snuff, if people aren't familiar with that.
Yes.
And it's a place of gratitude and ritual and ceremony for me. And it was, it was just there that I always went. And then there where they did the women's circle. And down there is where you pinpointed ceremonial vortex. I don't know if you said what the ceremonial space was for, but we do intuitively use it. So...
Yeah, so there you go. You guys are an example of, exactly. So we're all, well, not all, but some of us are interacting with them without knowing or have a degree of like, this just feels better, or this doesn't feel good, or but not necessarily being able to explain a context for it.
Yeah.
So, I guess I want to go a little bit more into, because you do this. So like you said, you came and actually did some, divination on our land. And like you said, there was lots of spots where we were just like, oh yeah, we already do this here. And that's what you kind of found. So I guess let's start with first. So for anyone that doesn't know, I think most people listening to our podcast would have some idea of what ley lines are, or at least heard of them. But then do you want to just go a little deeper into like sort of when you pick up on portals and vortexes and sort of what the differences are and how they kind of work?
I can do a demonstration now since I'm sitting on a vortex at the intersection of ley lines, and I'll show you you've seen my process, but for everyone's benefit.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
You can do this without rods. I can do it. So my friend taught me a method of having my hands palm up, dropping into hard space, meditating, dropping into hard space, and I basically use my third eye as like a yes/no. So I can do that, but this is a lot more immediate, and it's obviously visual, and people go, people that are skeptical go, oh, it's doing something, and so.
Yeah.
And I've also been doing it with pendulums recently, but this is just basically coat hanger wire or fencing wire. It's nothing special, right? So anyway, all right, I'll go through my process on this vortex that I'm right on. So, all right, got my rods here. I'm just trying to get them in front of the camera. All right. All right, so I'll just go through my process. Am I on a vortex? Yes. Okay, I knew that. Is it masculine? Yes, it's masculine. Is it for ceremony? No. Is it for healing? Meditation? Is it for manifestation? I knew that, so manifestation. Is it connected to the stars? Yes. Is it connected to an underground water supply? Yes. Is it good for ceremony? Yes. There's been healings in my music studio as well, which I'm grateful. Also, my friends been doing healings on myself and others. So that's my process. And for example, obviously I said there's one running right through here. So I'll just go off camera for a second and I'll show you how I walk into it. So basically I have to put intention, and I usually ask things in my mind, but for your benefit, I'm asking things out loud. But I'll just, see if I can find this ley line for you. Whoops. Okay, so please show me the ley line, and they're crossing right here, right through here, right? And so it's something that I've done for 13 years, being able to find ley lines, but I only really upgraded my abilities with a like-minded friend who lives where I live. I live in Emerald in Victoria, right on the outskirts of Melbourne. And anyway, we have upgraded each other's knowledge by being able to find vortexes and being able to, we can modify them and we can create our own ley lines, and we can go into that later. But so that's briefly my process. And I'm still learning the ceiling of it and all that. And whenever I show this in front of people, they say, can you ask this? Can you ask that? And so I'm learning from other people like, oh, I never thought to ask this or ask that. So that's essentially, how I
did you get into starting to do that? Was it just an intuitive thing where you could kind of feel them and then you started using the dowsing rods, or how was it introduced to you?
I think it was in 2011 where I started really delving into it, 13 years ago or something like that. And since I woke up in 2006, I just was aware of ley lines and how government and religious buildings were situated on them. So whenever I walked past a church, I would just sort of see if I felt different. And I was also experimenting with, connecting to my intuition around that time, because it was over in Japan that I went through my awakening was in stages, but it full blown in 2006. And I was teaching English. I don't know if anyone knows James Corbett or the Corbett Report.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
So I used to work with him, and we both woke up same time, same place, teaching English in Western Japan. And I had a few beers with him. After work, but I didn't know at the time that he had learnt what I learnt, and I only sort of found that he was on the same page when I came back to Australia, and I saw him on YouTube in 2010. I was like, what? I used to work with that dude, and wow, we woke up and we never talked about this because it was very lonely for 4 years. I didn't really meet any other people for 4 years, so am I off track? Anyway.
Interesting. No, very interesting.
So I was just noticing my feelings when I'm going past certain structures, and then I would get out the rods and stuff like that. And then what really kicked it into gear with me, I went to Australia's only mainland major earth energy vortex is in the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. And I went to a place called Wilpena Pound, and I wrote my second EP exclusively from channeling lyrics. So me and my ex would walk a 10-kilometer trail up and back every day, and I'd have my music on repeat, my instrumentals, and then I'd walk 5 minutes and then get a few lines and I'd write it down. And by the end of the trail, I had a whole rap written. And so I wrote it, it's called Exploration in Vibrations, and it was all this channel stuff from the land. So that was how I learned how I could, you can potentially get downloads from these ley lines and vortexes if you are calibrated and if you have the intention and all that sort of thing. So, I'm still learning what the limits are. But when I was up around your way, I did a few healings of that area, and I go out to random nature places and sort of ask, should I do a healing or should I do a clearing? Yes, no. And I met some shamans when I was at Hanging Rock Falls. Basically, I rocked up there, and I was hoping to be alone because I just like to do it alone, right? And anyway, they came at the same time. I was like, oh, man. And then I didn't know at the time, but they were like, oh, man, we wanted to do our thing. And so I went over to the trail. I was like, I'm just going to vibe these guys out. I'm just going to act like I'm checking out like the tourist information on the map or whatever. I was like, yeah. And the dude turned around to me like within a second. He's like, you're here to help us. No, what is it? What do you say? Something like you're here to help us. No, you're here to help us do some healing. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you're a musician. I'm like, yeah. It's like, well, you should bring your instrument because I forgot my flute. And like, all right. And so I went down with this. There was 2 Colombian shamans, right? And then so basically, I went down there and I vibed the spot. So what I found when I was up around your way, which is new to me, is that most waterfalls, they have a major vortex. And for me, what I found in the waterfalls around your area is that where obviously the waterfall comes down and then there's a pool, right? Where it starts draining away and making another stream going further downhill. Usually one side of that stream is the major vortex of each waterfall. So I quickly, before they started doing their ceremony, I found out where that major vortex was, and then I put my rods away, and I was like, all right, I'm going to play guitar. So I jammed it. I've got a few videos of it actually, but I jammed over their. They were speaking in Spanish most of the time, so I couldn't understand it, but I was just doing the soundtrack basically, and then I did a little bit of English. But anyway, he stood, the main guy, he stood exactly on the vortex for his whole ceremony, and I only told him at the end, I'm like, hey man, did you just realize you were standing on the vortex? He's like, no man, I was just intuitively felt drawn to this position.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway, that's incredible. An example.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And so how would you explain, because I still don't even fully understand, and I've done like workshops on this now, and but like how would you explain like what a portal is and what a vortex is and maybe what the difference is, or are they kind of the same?
Okay, it was very good explained recently. Someone said not all portals are vortexes, but not all vortexes are portals.
Right.
So basically, a portal is just a vortex where interdimensional beings could come and go through, or potentially humans that know how to harness that can go through. And I'm aware that the indigenous, that's kind of what they did on Walkabout. I've heard things here and there. So, yeah. I lost track of what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good explanation. And this popped into my head too, because it was, you remember the movie The Matrix? Yeah. And I don't know if you ever saw The Animatrix. Remember the animated series of short films?
Yeah, yeah.
And in that, in The Matrix, they would enter and exit the Matrix at phone booths, at portals. Okay. And then in the Animatrix, there was one of the episodes where there was like a vortex where one of these kids found this little abandoned building where they would throw stuff into the vortex and it would either float or it would disappear and come flying at them from another angle from across the room, which is, fictionalized maybe, but just this idea, I saw that and something resonated, but I was like, I think, well, knowing what I know now I don't know if you'll have to meet Villy at some point, but
I've met Villy. I stayed at the property for 5 days.
Yeah. So for anyone listening...
sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, for anyone listening, we're talking about the LFM property where they're building their health retreat, and it's on Villy is who owns the land, and he's like amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting story. He saw something in me that I didn't yet know I had. So like, he's like, yeah, Linton, like when you go and do this, and because he sort of floated the idea about me doing like geomancy there and like, mandalas and blah, blah, blah. It didn't eventuate, but he's like, all right, I want you to come in, like, because obviously, as you're aware, they have the 9 octagonal healing pads for the different modalities based on the energy. It's like, yeah, come with me. And then I don't know if you came, but I know Chloe and a few other people my sister followed me, and I was like, oh man, the pressure's on. Like I wasn't expecting a crowd, and I didn't have my rods, and I was just doing it all like, third eye, heart, blah, blah, blah. And I was just really focusing, and it took a lot of effort, but thankfully all of the 9 vortexes that I checked, that I dowsed and stuff, they checked out with a number of other spiritual people that Billy already had gotten to check out prior. And I'm like, sure. All right, sweet. He saw something. It's interesting. Yeah, sometimes people see things in me that I don't yet know about myself, and I'm always very grateful.
That's awesome.
It's encouraging. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think those people will always come into your path. I think, especially for you, you seem very, very, I mean, we're all divinely guided, but in our different ways. But for you, it's like, these people just come into your life and like, oh, you can do this. I can see this. It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah. And Billy's interesting because he's written some scripts, and I won't divulge what he's told us in private, but in the industry, so we talked about the animatrix and the matrix. Yeah. The people that write these things, they're not always, and I'll just explain this. I won't explain why I know this, but just talking to Billy, who's an insider, they don't always come from people that pre-condition and pre-program, and they know all this knowledge consciously and they hide it. Sometimes the people writing it are creatives like you that tap into this knowledge, and sometimes it can be so exact as to a script can be written that is the life story of some prominent person that's going to be well known in the future, or somebody that needs to be introduced. And this power, this gift, is given to these writers, and then Hollywood just basically capitalizes on it because the stories are compelling and powerful. They're true. But the idea of vortexes and the matrix and ley lines and portals in and out, like, it's just true.
Well, and that makes sense too, because that's what Hollywood does. They kind of corrupt, they corrupt the truth, and they put their own twist on it, and that's why, because like even that, like just there's thousands. I could think of thousands of examples of movies, TV shows where you see like them traveling through portals and creating portals and going through them and going to other dimensions or other places. But because we've been so programmed to just believe that everything on TV and movies is completely fictionalized, that's how we see it. Oh, it's just a movie. It's just made up. And I mean, we saw that in the last few years when, everyone on our side was like, they've been like pre-programming us for ages. Look at the movie Outbreak. Look at this. And everyone's like, it's just a movie. And it's just like, they just don't get it. So they do that. I mean, they have to, because, there's an aspect of under natural law, they have to tell us what they're doing. They can't just flat out lie. Otherwise it comes back on them. So it's very deceptive in the way they do it. They have to do it where it's based in truth, but it's completely twisted or inverted so that we are deceived.
Yeah, and Hollywood does what it says on the tin. Basically, the Druids used to use holly wood as their wands in order to manipulate people and cast spells on them, right? So it's all there in plain sight, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
And then that area of Hollywood, I can't remember the other stories I've heard, but I know that there is a type of holly branch, a Hollywood thing that grew there. That is why they picked that location, the energy vortexes that are there. It's very powerful.
Yeah, nothing's by accident. Like, these people know what they're doing. And this is the thing, like, I feel like a lot of us are just coming into this knowledge. These people have known this stuff for thousands and thousands of years, and it's been purposefully hidden from us.
Yeah, and the exciting part that I'm all about is this has been used without our knowledge or consent, and now that a lot of us, some are waking up in different ways with more abilities, are using it and flipping the tables, and with good intention and with love, which I really do. It sounds cliche, but it really is more powerful than their intentions, because the darkness and evil, I don't know if you'd agree, but I've heard that they don't really have the power to create like we do. They can just manipulate, and they put their big buildings on the ley lines, and they impose their force on it. And like you mentioned earlier, which you might want to get into, is we can create our own ley lines and
Yeah, let's go into that. That's fascinating.
Okay, so I'll play you a video and I'll narrate it, and I'll show you the structure that I built at my dad's. So I made a 200-meter ley line out of quartz crystals, and then charge that with intention and stuff. So I'll play the video. I can pause it. I'll have to pause it a few times just to explain things, and feel free to ask further questions and whatever. So
awesome.
I will find that.
And for anyone listening, definitely jump on our video platforms and watch this, because I don't know what it is, but it sounds like it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, you can always watch it at Rumble,
YouTube for now.
And Telegram.
And those are in the show notes.
So a little bit about sacred geometry, graphic design. So this was my old logo. I call myself Harmonic Spaces these days because permaculture is a bit esoteric for some people. But I was looking at a pumpkin leaf and I was like, wow, this pumpkin leaf is 5-sided. Wow, it's a pentagon.
Wow.
And so that's what it is. There's a pumpkin leaf in the background, then obviously a sketch to indicate like design. And these are the trees, obviously looking at a plan view.
I love it.
Five represents healing and regeneration in sacred geometry, so that's the purpose.
God,
so anyway,
beautiful.
So I'll play, but I'll pause in a second. So this is documenting a structure that I built at my dad's property. It's called a reciprocal frame roof, and I'll explain that in a second. So, right. So you can see up here, this is the ley line, right, that I've created. And all along here, you can't really see it, but further up here, there's have you guys heard of a medicine wheel?
Yes.
Oh, like a Bora ring?
Yeah, it's like a Native American thing where they have like quartz crystals in like a circle, and then they have a cross in the middle with like a north, south, east direction, and all the quartz stones touch each other, and that creates a circuit.
Right.
And you can put intention into that with meditation, etc. Right. So anyway, there's one at the very top. You can't see it, but there's one at the very top. And this whole time when I was, so I did like the permaculture 101 thing of observing the landscape before you build. So I was camping here before I decided to build on it. And I was always looking at this tree in the distance. And for whatever reason, I've been there for years and never walked over to this tree. And I made a 5-sided structure, right? And it just so happens that 55.5 meters away, of course, there's a 5-trunked tree that I'm aligning the center of the structure to. And I didn't even know at the time. I was like, wow, okay, that's a definite sign. And also below the structure, 5.55 meters away, just because I can, there used to be a 5-sided fruit, which is called a Carica pentagon, which is like a mountain pawpaw from Peru, right? I had that planted, and there was a tiered mandala garden bed, which I can show later. And that was all in the alignment too. And so I'll keep going. And I planted a bunch of trees. That's another side story. But anyway, I'll keep going. So the ley line goes down and it intersects like a campfire, and all the campfire stones are a ring of quartz crystals. Keeps going through. And then there's like the meditation space where I have a larger crystal. Keep going. And I didn't even plan this, but the line keeps going, and where these two streams join, the confluence of two streams is where it intersects. And I did not plan that. I was like, whoa, that's another sign. Okay, I'm going to do that for sure. And then, you can't see it anyway. And then at the bottom, Anyway, and then the bottom of that, there's another medicine wheel in the south, which caps off the 200-meter quartz crystal stone alignment. And so whenever I've gone there, I used to go there by myself. Before my dad built on the land, before I built on there, I used to just like do what I called stripping it back. So I'm well aware of what I can do without, as in, I just had a very simple lifestyle, living by the stream, bathing in the water, doing my dishes, cooking, drinking from the stream, and just like, drying my clothes and heating myself with a fire. And I used to do that for days at a time and not see another human, and walk around naked and telepathically talk to trees and just sort of, vibe out the place. So anyway, I'll keep going. So I modeled it in 3D first. So it's like a 3.6 meter high structure with a mezzanine loft. It was supposed to be an off-grid healing space and music studio. So I'll keep going now. So this is the space, and you can see here the ring of trees that I planted that my dad's cows and horses have eaten now. But anyway, it was a good little experiment. And this gives you a bit of context. It's about 370 meters above sea level. And this is my dad's house, and here is where I'm building. It's 100 acres. And so I went with a pick and shovel for like a week and excavated this 7-meter diameter circle. And then I put these foundations in. And then this is basically trees that I cut from my dad's land. And I cut down 6 trees, and I gave each tree like a heads up before I cut them down. I'm like, hey, I'm going to take your life like a week before. Yeah. And I came the day before. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to take your life. It's not going to be a waste. It's going to be for something good. And actually 4 of the 6 trees have resprouted, so I don't feel that bad. I just reset their growth cycle. They actually didn't die, only 2 of them died, so I don't feel as bad about it.
Wow.
But anyway, basically this structure is a testament to what you can do with minimum time, budget, and resources and skills. So basically it's trees from the land, clay, straw, and sand from the land, and stones from the land. And there's also building materials, hard rubbish that I've just pick up off the side of the road for free. And also, like, I used to work on building sites, like doing stonemasonry, doing plumbing, whatever. And obviously, you may be aware just the amount of waste, right? So I was just able to pick up like screws and pick up whatever for free. And so I've only spent about $900 in total on this structure, and everything else is either free or so-called waste materials. But there's a good adage in permaculture. There's no such thing as waste. It's just a resource which we're yet to find a new use for.
Yeah, so, that's amazing.
Anyway, and this is about reclaiming a rite of passage that most of us have lost, which is building our own structure. You know, once upon a time when we lived in the village, if you wanted a house, the village shipped in and you had a house within a day to a week. You know, nothing fancy, but, you know, it'll cover the bases. Now, obviously, we have this ridiculous house prices and debt. And it's just about, you know, reclaiming that for ourselves and showing people what's possible with minimum time and budget and all that, right? So anyway, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
So here we are putting up the posts and beam structures and putting up the post. And I didn't have any trouble. All my friends just wanted to come and help me for free because it's so enriching, right? It's so immediate. Always friends like, when are we going up? When are we going up? I'm like, all right. So I had to plan it. So it's good. And so what we're doing now is putting up the Charlie pole in the center. And that allows you to set your first rafter at height. And so you'll see in a second that I'm going to lean in the first rafter. And here we go. Yeah, so I'm leaning in the first rafter, and basically you offset the rafter from the center, and it gives you a skylight like a mandala in the center of it. And what we're doing now is getting the spacing right before we lower them down onto each other, and they reciprocate each other's weight, reciprocal frame roof. So basically you'll see in a second what it looks like. And there's a nice little pentagram right there. And I put a little pin through each intersection to lock them in. And this is us doing the roof wrong the first time. I made it too low and I actually had to adjust it and make it a steeper angle so the rain would go off. I paid like $150 for all this mismatched tin. And it's basically unashamed reusage of, yes, I'm using so-called waste materials. Yes, it's like a nice little patchwork. So it's like, so that's that. So this is the roof there. And we're doing it right this time. As you can see, I put a few other beams that I got all for free from building sites as well. And now we're about to go into the center of the skylight. And then you'll see in a second where I got up to phase 2. So obviously got the post and beam and the roof on right now. And now I'm building the skylight in the center. So this structure, 5-sided, it has 5 windows, of course.
Nice.
That's cool.
Plenty of other 5 things. So I got all of this for free. I got the screws for free. I was doing roofing, plumbing at the time. So I made this little skylight. And there you go. Looks like a little clamshell. And yeah, there it is in situ. And I wanted to make a mechanism where you can wind it. And that's what it would, that simulates how much it would open if it were to work. So that's that. In a second, you'll see the interior of the structure. And then here we go. So what we're doing now is we're stomping cob. And do you guys know what cob is?
No.
Yeah, but explain it for
anyone that doesn't know. So cob is basically, nature's concrete cement, basically. So it's a mixture of clay, sand, and straw. And basically you try a number of different ratios, and then you let them dry overnight, like a fist-sized ball of it, right? And then you drop it from shoulder height the next morning. And whatever one doesn't crack open, that's the mix that you go with, right? That's how you find your ratio. So anyway, what we're doing is basically we're stomping cob on the top there, and then basically all of these stones have quartz like veins running through them as well. So I have quartz in the foundation. So these foundations go down 1 foot, they're 1 foot wide, and they protrude 1 foot above the soil. And what that does is it creates a little envelope of a pocket of warmth that disconnects the inner ground of the structure from the outside ground, basically, and also stops rising dampness. So I'll just keep going. We're doing that. That's just in preparation for the walls. So you can see here I'm using pallets, And of course, I have 5 groups of 5 bottles. These are wine bottles that I've joined together to make a brick. And these lines here represent the golden mean ratio. So from the ceiling to the floor and from the floor to the ceiling, that represents the golden mean, or the Fibonacci sequence, you know. So I've encoded a lot of harmonic numbers and ratios into this structure, and it just so happens that this wall that we're looking at now is 3,333 millimeters high, and I did not plan that. But I have a little,
love it.
I have a little saying: I do not forsake a fortuitous alignment. As in, you know, if something's meant to be, I don't question. I'm like, yes, sick. I'm rolling with that. You know.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I've got all these pallets for free off the side of the road. I've got all these wine bottles from the neighbors for free. And basically, they're filled with a thing called light straw. And that is straw that's been coated in like a mud slurry, like a milkshake consistency. And then you basically put it inside the pallet and you tamp it down with like a sledgehammer. And then that hardens, and then that gives you a very good insulation value. So, and this also allows the structure to wick moisture and air. So the structure breathes, very important. And so what I want to do is render the inside with a clay mixture and render the outside with a lime mixture, which promotes the wicking of moisture out of the structure. So this gives you an idea of the walls. I'll keep going.
Very cool.
And it gives you an idea of what it is inside. And you can see that in the front there, that's where the front door would be. And pan around. So right there is like, this is the inverse golden mean, the golden ratio. This is actually a door, this window. It's like a seated reading window. And this is one of the windows where you have to crouch down. You have to be meditating to get a good view out of this window. And I deliberately made this structure with hard to access. Other windows you have to get on your tippy toes. Other windows you have to climb a ladder to look out of. So you can't have a lazy sort of indoor life looking at the view. You have to work for the view, and it promotes, like, you can't really see what's outside without working for it. You have to go outside. And so the whole idea is that this promotes an outdoor lifestyle connected to nature. And, you know, this is a music studio / meditation space / sleeping space. And I wanted to have an outdoor kitchen, outdoor toilet, etc. So I have to go outside. So that's a bit of why that is. And I didn't even plan this door as well as another fortuitous alignment. Like, the spacing of this door is the golden mean ratio of the wall width, right? So it's like, yeah, of course, I'll put that in there. It's meant to be there. So it keeps going up, and you can see how it looks like with the skylight in the center. And then it will keep going. And so I put in the back window. This window you have to get a tippy toe to look out of, as I said. So it gives you a bit of an idea. So I've actually, since this video is shot, I've actually finished all of the doors, all of the walls. I messed up this drainage. I have to redo it. And then next I got a bunch of pegs, garden pegs for like garden edging, and I banged them into the side of this post. And this is like the ladder to get up to the mezzanine floor. And I also got a bunch of beams that I made like a big super beam out of, because it's a 5 meter span. So I had to reinforce it. And basically you can sleep like a queen size bed up here. And you'll see in a second what it looks like up there. And underneath is where the music studio is going to be, right? And because, one point of note, I'll go back 1 second. Where is it? Yeah, all right. Because this is a 5-sided structure, there are no parallel walls. Obviously, with a 4-sided structure, we have parallel walls, and you get reverb and you get feedback, right? So for a music studio with no parallel walls, the sound behaves differently. So I haven't yet tested how it sounds exactly, but that's part of the idea. So anyway, this is another window you have to climb the ladder to look out of. And then, in the corners, I was going to have like shelving. And then the little window up there, I was going to have a mandala bottle brick motif. And there you can see the guttering that I've done. And then I've done a bit more since this video is shot, but that's the end of it. There you go. I'll just undo.
That's awesome.
Screen.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
It reminds me so much of, are you aware of Christopher Gardner, Topher?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you would be. And like how he does domes, but just the intention that these buildings are built with, like it's like you said, it is like this rite of passage that we've lost, like because my dad's a builder, so he's built actually all of our homes that we've lived in until we moved to the inner west of Sydney, because then they were like flipping homes. But there is something different about living in a home that you've built yourself, that's been built by the people that are living there. But even then there's just like, so there's obviously varying degrees, because like what you did to what my dad did, you know, like I remember the first home or second home dad built, I think they like bought it off a plan. They just bought the plan for the home and then they built from that. But like, I just remember like looking at all those housing estates when they go up and they're just like these cookie cutter and I you know, and like I get that for some people it's all they can afford, like I get it.
Yeah.
But it's just, you go into them and there's just no life in them, you know. And even when we moved to the inner west of Sydney, and we were flipping homes, they were like the old 50s bungalow homes and they just have so much character, and you just don't get that in these modern buildings anymore.
Right. Sorry, you cut out for like a little bit and I didn't catch the last bit.
Oh, I just said you just don't like the old homes, like, you know, like the old 50s bungalow or the, you know, we were in a semi-attached, like these homes that were built in different eras too. They just have so much more character and you just don't get that in modern buildings anymore.
Yeah, and my dad also built the family home twice over. Like he used to be a carpenter as well, so I can resonate with your situation. And yeah, these, you know, cookie cutter houses, they're obviously not inspiring and whatever. We all need accommodation. But like it creates boxed in thinking. You know, you live in a box and you're sort of boxed in, and so like, you know, obviously higher ceilings are better for the mind as well. But I think it definitely has a correlation with how we think. What we live in definitely has an impact on how we think, I feel.
Absolutely.
100%.
And then they have the concept of the right angles, the square angles that they call the angle of sorrow, 90 degrees. And then you have the more harmonious angles, like the one that you built. And,
which is 108. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does it affects, well, and you can see it. Like even here we have spiders in all the corners and bugs and things. Like energies just kind of like collect and just get stagnant in those areas. And then you have spiders that collect there because they know they're guaranteed a meal, you know? So,
well, it's interesting too, where you're like, we always had high ceilings in our homes, and just now I'm looking, I'm like, oh, no wonder Isaac's memory is really bad. I feel like I don't get as much inspiration because we're like in this little cabin with this small roof. But even this little cabin, you've seen our place, Linton, like, you can tell it's just been built by someone with like whatever they could get, whatever they could. And, you know, it's not built with, you know, as much intention as you and all the sacred geometry sort of folded in. But I love it's got its little quirks, and it's like it's just different when, it's been made like, you know, from scratch, it feels like, you know, where they're just kind of like, we're just going to do this and we'll, you know, make do with what we've got. And, you know, it feels very much grounded and connected, more connected to the earth.
Yeah, there's an author called Christopher Alexander, and he wrote a few good books. One of them is The Timeless Way of Building. So kind of what you're describing there is the timeless way of building, how, people lived in a place for a while and they built things iteratively. They didn't smash it out all at once. And so what I've done is, obviously, because I live 2 hours away from where I'm building that, right? And I couldn't go up for 2 years over COVID with all that nonsense, right? So that took the wind out of my sails. And so it's dragged out to like 4.5, 5 years. And my dad was going to sell, but now he's taken off the market. So like, maybe I'll finish it, whatever. But like, Christopher Alexander, and he wrote another really good book called A Pattern Language, and I've incorporated some of that. And just a very small synopsis. A pattern language has like 256 different patterns from the micro to the macro, insofar as how you build a room to like all the way up to how you arrange a town and a state, right? And so some of these patterns that are incorporated to what he considers good building, for example, having windows where you can see the ground outside is subconsciously it's just better to see the ground outside. It's just like it's a safety thing if we need to get outside. But also like he did a thing called he has a concept called the public privacy gradient. Have you heard of that?
No.
So essentially what you want ideally, the most private room in the house is generally the bedroom, right? Or the bathroom, right? So the more stages you have between the most private room in the house, your sanctuary, and the most public space relative to your house, which would be the middle of the road, right? So you have the middle of the road, then the sidewalk, then your front yard, then the front porch, then the hallway or whatever, the front room, blah, blah, blah. So the more stages you have in between your most private and public place, the more it gives the mind preparation to, I'm going to a different space. I'm going to a different space. Whereas if you have, like, for example, a bedroom opening out onto a busy street, that's obviously very jarring. And a way to, like, mitigate that jarring would be to, like, put a portico or an alcove around it, just to sort of delineate the space a little bit more. So anyway, side digression, but yeah.
Nice. I love all that stuff.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Just more reasons for us to upgrade our space, because it's funny because we've often talked about, more so for me, I find just having, we were just talking about this the other day, like I've struggled since Isaac's moved in, just with not having my own space. And it's not just because he's here, but the space that we live in is basically a studio.
Open plan.
Yeah, open plan. And it's very hard. Like, even for me with work, like, I don't have a separate office or study where I go and work and then I can leave and separate from that. It's all in the same space. We sleep in the same space. And it can get very, I guess, overwhelming and just not, like feeling there's no separation. But it's interesting what you said about the windows, because I actually find, because I've got all these windows where I see all the green outside, and I actually go outside less. I have to force myself to go outside and actually put my feet on the ground and go for a walk out in nature. And the more I do that, the more I don't find it as overwhelming being inside, you know, in the one space.
Yeah. 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 The, just watching what you were building there, it takes me back to, I built a pretty massive greenhouse at my parents' property during COVID, because supply chains were looking shaky at best, or, you know, I was like, well, my thing was, at the time I was doing lemon water every morning, and I wanted to do that for my health and all this stuff. And I was like, I was listening to Crow 777. He talks about how the fruit in the grocery stores is gas ripened, and it's not at its natural state, and it's better if you could just pick it off the tree. I just fell in love with that idea. I was like, and I just had this like inspiration. I was like, I want to rebuild some old world architecture as a greenhouse, and sort of bring back timber frame, the old mortise and tenon joint with like the mallet and the chisel, and learn how to do that. And I took this long process doing that. But anyways, I still have in Wyoming, which gets quite cold, negative 30 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, probably both in the winter. And we still have 2 lemon trees, I think, a lime or an orange growing in there. Nothing's fruiting yet. They grow a bit slower, because even with the greenhouse, you get less sunlight in the winter. But I remember putting my energy and time into that place and following my intuition. It physically cost me something. Like I injured my shoulder, and then I broke my foot.
Wow.
I dropped a freaking log on my foot during that process.
And same as you, Linton, it took him about a year. Like, it wasn't just like, we're just going to do this and knock it out.
It was like a year to get the frame. Well, not quite a year to get the frame, like 8 months, maybe 6 months. And then about a year to fully close it in. And then I actually, just before I left to meet Alexa on our epic road journey over the States. No, or is it before I came? No, it was before I left to meet you in Mexico. But I built like another greenhouse on the front of it to block the wind from the front door. I basically put up walls, doing the same thing. Reclaimed timbers, just these, trees that our neighbor has stacked in his yard, because firewood is how you survive up there.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's so good for your soul, what you put your time into and your energy. Like, that building that structure has so much meaning to it. And it's like a rebirthing and like knowing what's possible with very little money. It takes a lot of time, a lot of sweat equity, but it doesn't take that much money. It takes creativity, it takes willpower, and and belief and love. Like, love for, like, you can tell with the way that you shaped it and the way that you put these things, even when you weren't trying to make it exactly, 3,333. It's like, it just comes out almost like Beethoven writing a symphony. It's like that built into, and I think that's where we're going back to, the type of resonance, internal resonance that built things like the cathedrals and stuff like that, it'll probably look different. But
sorry,
no, go, Linton. No, go.
And I have experience building a cathedral, and I can show you photos of that later, just as a side note. Keep going.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting that you said like it's almost like this rite of passage that we've lost. I think it is like this rite of passage for men that men have lost. And, we see now in our society like this emasculation of the man and this hyper-feminization of society and women being more like men. And I think that is a big rite of passage. Like it's the masculine energy is to provide and protect. And what a better way to provide for yourself and your family than by building a structure for you to all live in, So I think there is definitely something in that. And obviously I'm not a man, so I can't speak to that. But if you guys,
100%.
have experienced that.
For sure. I can't really add to that. You've hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Part of the, archetypes of each sex, and what our functions are.
Yeah. So I wanted to go more into this. Is a great segue because like all the stuff you explained, like in the structure you're building, like the sacred geometry. So not just in buildings, but because I had heard about sacred geometry maybe like a few years ago for the first time. Didn't really know what it was. And then I've seen things since then that kind of explain it more. But then I've realized, I think the reason that it can be a little bit hard to conceptualize is that it kind of applies to everything. It's not, I think people hear sacred geometry and think like math and shapes and whatever, but it's so much more than that, because I'm assuming too, that's part of like, it plays into music and, like 432 hertz, for example, versus 440 hertz. That's all got to do with sacred geometry, right? Do you want to go more into that?
Yeah. So, mathematics, the universal language, music, the universal language. For me, I define music as, mathematics that we can hear, right? So I break it down into three things, music. So for me, it's obviously so much more than this, but it's three constituent parts are volume, the volume of whatever sound you have, the frequency of that sound, and the timing that volume is and frequency are triggered at. For me, that's all music is. There's obviously so much more than that, but really that's the basics of mathematically, right? So in all the music that I've been making, I incorporate harmonic numbers like palindromic numbers like 515, or even the Fibonacci sequence like 6.18 is one track. 0.618. So I incorporate all these numbers. I like to have the track peaking around the golden mean of the track. I break that down and I sort of begin with the end in mind, so I know what duration it is, and I know at certain numbers, at 1 minute and 11 seconds I might have a sound, and then at 3 minutes 33 seconds I might have another sound, just to mark those little things subconsciously. Some people pick it up, some people won't. And I incorporate that with the 432 and obviously the intention of healing life. So everything that I do, all the random stuff, is the base level is healing. That's what I want to facilitate, So whether it's throwing music events or building structures or making music, the base level is healing. That's a short way of how I encode numbers into, even the BPMs that I choose. And like, for example, the latest track that I made, it's 77 BPM. And I was like, I want to do something in the reverse harmonic sequence. So the harmonic sequence is literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, 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 or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So I was like, I'll make a track that's 5 minutes and 43, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? But I wanted a sign, and here was another fortuitous alignment. And I just so happened to look at with 77 BPM, the track that's 5 minutes and 43 minutes duration, it ends on the 111th bar, 111. So I was like, of course I'm going to end the song in 5 minutes and 43 seconds. So stuff like that, another fortuitous alignment. Yep, of course, I'm rolling with that. So that's a small example of how I do that.
Yeah. And I think like the simplest way that people can like kind of tap into that, and I think what people are most familiar with is like when you look at your phone and it's 11:11 or it's like 2:22. And I find that, and most people say this, like once you start, and it won't happen. Like I often find I'm very aware of this, much more aware of this now, is that sometimes I'll go through like, I don't know, a 4 or 5 week period where I'm seeing the same number. So it'll be like 111. Or 1212. 222, and I'm just seeing ones and twos. And then so I always look at the numerological meanings of those numbers. So one's all about new beginnings and new ventures, and two's all about partnership. So it's interesting that, just even that I think people can tap into without knowing sacred geometry. It's just being aware of these patterns, really, like in nature and in your environment.
Yeah, and for the people that...
You go ahead, sorry. No, it's all good, you go.
Well, I was going to say, for the people that might be skeptic about it, like I mentioned previously, I just want to address the people that might be coming from a Christian background where they're like, oh, this is all like witchcraft and weird stuff. The bell in the churches.
Yes.
The bell in the churches is based off of sacred geometry. The frequency from those bells was a healing frequency. And whoever they were, decided to remove all the bells. And you can tell when you go to these old villages or these towns, some of them, sometimes you feel them in Europe. I think when I was in Paris, France, I took my daughter there years ago, and there's still some neighborhoods that have them, and you can feel it. And remembering like church bells and all that stuff, it has this resonance to it that has sort of a celebratory feeling to it, a healing, a soothing. It makes, I think, for a peaceful community. This stuff is built into the most amazing cathedrals that, whatever the actual history of where these things were, who made them and why. But this structure, the sacred geometry, it's just a way of describing, it's also part of nature. It's like built into the design that God built this place with. There's absolutely...
That's right. It's like you just see the patterns, really. Like if you just see like... They're just patterns in there. And that's for me where it's like, that's truth. That resonates as truth when you can see it in multiple different things. You can hear it in music. It shows up in the way that leaves grow and flowers and all these different things. And, the experiments that you can do with vibrating things at different frequencies and seeing the patterns that they make in sand or in water or like whatever it is that you're working with.
Cool.
And that for me, like that's when I start to, even when we were talking about the ley lines, it's when you start to hear the same sort of knowledge and information coming through from completely different people and completely different sources. And it's like, that's when for me, I'm like, that resonates as truth. Like these people don't know each other. They're from different parts of the world and they're all saying the same thing. And it usually is like this ancient knowledge that people have had for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, and etymologically, music from the Latin means mother science, the mother science.
Wow.
Cool.
So, it's all... And have you heard of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland?
No.
I've not.
So the Da Vinci Code, it features in the Da Vinci Code. Anyway, long story short, have you heard of cymatics? I'm sure a lot of people would have. Cymatic? So basically in the Rosslyn Chapel along the arches, they had these like cubes, right? And each cube had like a random pattern that they didn't really understand at the time, right? And then what they realized is that each one of these patterns is a different cymatic note etched in stone, and then they were able to find out that a whole song, a melody, was encoded on it. Like each stone is a note, right? And there's this whole Rosslyn Chapel melody, so that's encoded in the church. And the anatomy of a church, right? So I worked on one. I can show you some photos a bit later, but like the church is obviously all about promoting ascension, right? There's an emphasis on verticality, and
sure.
Irrespective of the religion, most religious structures have either a cone, a dome, or a pyramid on top, right? And that's all about gathering etheric energy, right, to one point. It can be four represents a solid foundation. Most of our structures are four-sided, right? Tapering up to a 1 point, oneness, God, So that is one thing. It's all promoting ascension, right? But also, obviously, the organs and the bells for generating organs and our bodies. But also, do you know why they have stained glasses in churches? Stained glass windows, high stained glass windows. Can you
feel
guess?
like I've heard this before, but I can't remember the reason.
No,
So basically, Christian medieval monks noticed when they were sojourning and going through the under canopy of a forest, right, that they were able to enter more meditative states with the dappled light coming through the leaves onto the forest floor. And so the high stained glass windows emulate light coming through the forest canopy and dappled light, which puts you in a more suggestive state for prayer and meditation, right? And not only that, there's other references to trees in there as well. Like the columns are the trunks, and the arches are the branches branching out. So it's like you're going down like a boulevard of trees, and then the dappled light's coming through. So it's emulating that, and that's kind of like even a bit of a pagan sort of overlay, because there were a lot of pagan stonemasons that sort of weren't really on board with Christianity back in the day, and they encoded a lot of pagan stuff into the churches, much to the chagrin of some of the Christians that were in them. But anyway,
and you can see it. It's really interesting because you can see it in a lot of these old church buildings. Like that, I've noticed it, but I didn't actually put 2 and 2 together until you just said it. But you do see the columns kind of often go up in these arches that look very tree-like. And then you often see the image of the green man. Because that's where it was from. It was the pagans believed in these nature spirits, and when they were trying to convert them to Christianity, they incorporated all of these images and structures so that they could get them on board. So it's very interesting.
And also alchemical knowledge. I've heard, can't remember the guy's name that wrote the book, but there's basically a few books that someone wrote that was explaining and exploring the alchemical knowledge that was written in like Notre Dame Cathedral and some other prominent cathedrals. And that's it's interesting. It's almost it'll be a lifelong study of mine. I don't know where to look for all the alchemical stuff, but I feel like it's pertinent for transformation, for what's the word? Aikido. Aikidoing, the martial art where they transform energy and use the attacker's energy against them. I feel like it's very powerful for transmuting, a lot of stuff, whatever, stuff they spray in the skies, information they put out on the airwaves to condition people.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. It was, so we just read this or watched a video on this recently where they were saying, so at the time that they changed all of the music, the way it was recorded and put out, from 432 hertz, which is like more of like a healing, like positive frequency, to 440, which is negative, that was around the same time that they removed all the bells from the church buildings and town hall buildings and stuff. So it's like, for people that are like, oh, this is all woo-woo and it doesn't matter. If it didn't matter, why would they do that? Like, everyone listens to music to some degree or another, whether it's like, these days it's like might be on the radio, or we're listening to Spotify, or whether it's in a church and there's choir, or like music is one of those. It's a universal language, so it's everywhere. It's in nature. You can hear the birds chirping, and it sounds very musical. So if that didn't matter, why would they go to so much effort to change basically all of the way that music is recorded in the mainstream to something that's of a negative frequency?
And they're even adding even more negative frequencies, like down in Melbourne anyway, like a lot of churches have 4 and 5G towers strapped to the side of them. So it's like they're even pumping even worse energy from churches, right? I noticed it's not on any other religions. It just seems to be Christian churches that have allowed it for whatever reason, in Melbourne anyway, from what I've noticed. And the church that I worked on, had a massive ley line running through it, and I used to go there early in the morning and like start at like 6:30, and it's like dark in winter, right? And I noticed one morning I was walking up the scaffolding. It's like 5 flights, and there's a massive arch that goes through the center of the church, right? And that's where the ley line runs through, like where the arch is, the ley line runs through the center of that, right? And I just so happened to notice, because it was dark, like 2 kilometers in the distance, the Freemasonic logo was the bottom of the square was aligned with the top of the arch. So the Freemasons were pumping in negative energy into that church. And the reason that I was part of the team rebuilding that church is because a pedophile priest operated out of it, right? So who knows what they were doing? But that some disgruntled person came in the morning and Molotov cocktailed it, right? And the word on the street that I got from the locals is that the local police actually know who did it, but they're like, no, that's street justice, and there's a lot of people that wanted that church to burn, and they got a massive payout, and then that's where I randomly on purpose came in and started doing sacred geometry in stone, basically.
What was the energy like inside that building with such a dark presence there?
Well, fire is very cleansing, right? So I actually didn't really detect much dark stuff. But actually, all of the sordid deeds didn't really go down in the church, allegedly. Allegedly, they all went down in the presbytery, which was like the priest's headquarters, big building, which was right next to the church. And interesting, that has a window that looks out onto like children playing. Like there's a school next to it. So you can only imagine what the priest, that whole situation, right? So anyway, I didn't feel any negative energy. I feel that the fire cleansed it when I was working there for almost 3 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. Makes sense. So you went in there, and is this the one you wanted to show us photos of?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to show us? Because is this where because you said you also do a bit of stonemasonry. Were you actually doing that as well? You were kind of like changing things in there and like, I guess upgrading it on a much higher level than just renovations.
So we had to rebuild a lot of things from the ground up. So what I was ignorant before I did stonemasonry, right? I didn't know that different stones could burn. So the limestone is very soft stone, so that burnt. So we had to replace a lot of that. Because it was restoration, we had to faithfully replicate what was there, so we couldn't really change anything because it was heritage listed. It's actually heritage listed the year of my birth, 1984. Also a good book. not a good book, but a really good year to be born in. No, but anyway, I lost my so we had to replicate what was there. We couldn't really freestyle anything, and it was heritage listed, and we didn't have any flexibility with that.
And all the Freemasonry was paid for. There was no Freemasonry involved with the rebuilding of the church.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. All right.
While you're pulling that up, I just want to say, while you were talking and you said, I begin with the end in mind, I looked at Isaac because he always says that, and you're both manifesting generators, and it was interesting. When I was like putting your bio together after you'd sent it to me, I was like, this is like so the bio of a manifesting generator. Like you just across all these different things, you like jump in and out of things. And then when you said that begin with the end in mind, I was like, that's such a man gen thing to say.
I bet you, who wrote that? Was it the guy who wrote The One Thing, or Brian Tracy? I read it in a book somewhere and it really resonated, but I bet you he's a man gen as well.
Yeah, right, okay. All right, so do you see this?
Yeah, so cool. Beautiful.
So I built this window. I'm the only person alive in this country, as it just so happens, that has built a stained glass window out of stone in its entirety. So there was one exactly like this built opposite this one that I built. So this is a $500,000 window. I didn't get paid. I didn't get paid anywhere near as much as I should have for this. I'll be very honest. Someone was a bit greedy who I was working for, but that's another side story. Anyway, it took me a year to demolish the old stone, and so I only after 1 year experience stonemasonry, I got offered this big window, right? And I got this job because my friend worked in the permaculture nursery that. The stonemasonry boss, he owned this permaculture nursery. So I was just hanging out with my friend who managed it. And then he walked in and he's like, I was like, hey man, I love the garden. I love the sculptures. He's like, oh yeah, we're rebuilding a church in Brighton. Like we need more people. I'm like, hey, I'm down. So I went to the interview the next day, and I didn't know at the time it was like a group interview, and everyone from the lowest to the highest worker grilled me. It was really good. It was interesting. But anyway, that's how I got the job, and then I learned from the ground up. And basically because I had a background in visual arts, graphic design, obviously I have an eye for detail, but also because I've labored for most trades and I'm good on the tools, I have that skill as well. So those two attributes combined just allowed me to hit the ground running and just, like I said, within a year experience, I was put on this. So, you start storing big stones when you start, and then you sort of graduate, as you go up the ranks. So then after you cut big stones and you economize the cuts for the other stonemasons to carve from, you graduate to what's called being a banker mason, which is physically carving the stone on waist-high tables. And then when you get good at that, then you graduate to what's called fixing, which is essentially assembling the 3D jigsaw puzzle in stone. So, this took me a year to rebuild. And as it just so happened, with all the COVID stuff that happened, I got fired from this job, by the way, for not complying with COVID stuff. So that's how I not because of incompetence, but that's how I got let go. But anyway.
Good on you. That's a good way to get that's a good reason to get let go.
Yeah. So as it so happened, we got kicked off site, during all the COVID stuff. And, we were carving stone at home. And then as it just so happened, when we were allowed back on site in between lockdowns, because as you're aware, Melbourne got smashed, with all that fun times. Yeah. And so, but as a result of that, I was able to, it just so happened that I put the keystone, this one up here, I put that in on the eve of my 36th birthday, 369 factor 9, a phase of completion on the spiritual path, right? And because this structure wasn't properly, because it didn't have a roof, obviously, as you can see, the sun coming in, they didn't reinforce the engineering, right? And so this wall is actually, the brick wall containing it is actually like leaning and twisting. So I had to doctor all of these stones. So I either worked under more experienced people or other people worked under me, but I physically put every single stone in this. And like I said, one was built half a year before, but that was built by different stonemasons at different stages. And then there's another one where the ley line runs through, which is 1.5 times the size of this, that was built by different people as well. So anyway, I was able to put in the keystone on the eve of my 36th birthday, and because of the buckling and twisting of the wall, I couldn't put it in, like slot it in from one direction. I had to cut it in half, and I had to go in the outside, put it in, go on the other side and put it in. As a result of that, I've got a picture, I don't know where it is, but I wrote like a sentence like, I was here over COVID, building this window, this is what kept me sane, and then I put my little banker mark in there, which is like basically back in the day, to get paid from on a per stone basis of carving, you had to do like a little insignia. So mine was like a pentagon with a little 5-pointed star in it. So that's what's in there. So whenever that breaks and falls into the bloody North Road in Brighton, someone's going to uncover that and go, wow, okay, what happened here?
I love it. That's so good.
So anyway,
leaving your mark.
Yeah. So this window is like basically from the scaffolding to the 8 arch is about 2 meters high, and it goes down another 4 meters, and it's like 2.5 meters wide. So I'll go through a few more photos.
Wow.
These are some
beautiful.
These are some stones that I actually carved that are in the apse where the priest gives the sermon from. So that's that. These were when we were kicked off site during COVID. My boss was literally giving me pallets of stone to carve, and then I would give him finished stones. So each one of these stones is about 8 hours worth of work. And so that's that. And then there's another one. So these ones here, they taper into the cones on the next one, right? And then the little arch stones, the little ones on the right-hand side, they're what go in the arches, in the internal parts of the arches. So, there you go. That one there, my friend's actually giving me the finger and photobombing in the background. It's pretty funny. But actually, that's my boss. Yeah, that's my boss. So, one of my second in charge boss. But anyway, so as you can see, this is a waist high table. This is an old railway cart. And anyway, this is also about 8 hours worth of work of carving. And as you can see, it's medieval because we were right next to a school, so we couldn't use power tools and generate dust and noise. Wow. So it was literally old school medieval. The only things we had were like a forklift and a 2-ton crane. Everything else was like pretty much mostly hand tools. And so I don't know if you can see, is that zooming in? Yeah. Okay. So you can see there's a few different types of mallets, and then there's a few chisels, and then there's also what's called a riffler, which is like for basically smoothing and carving, filing the stone, I guess you could say. So there's that. Okay, this is an aisle window. So this is the first window that I built, and when I nailed this, that's when I graduated to doing the big fancy window, right? So this is I put in every stone of this one, and then also the stone here that's called a corbel. I put all of these in with a friend as well. This is just before I got fired for refusing to wear a mask in lockdown 4. And so these are the columns here. And there was, just before I could put the beautiful floral capitals in there, that's when I got fired. But then, so that's that. And that's how it goes down. And then I also got fired just before I could put Jesus's cross right on the top up here. So unfortunately, I didn't get to put the cross up. But anyway, so this is the capping. This is above that big fancy window that I showed you. This is the capping on the ridge. I built this window above above that window. And this is sandstone here. And then this is limestone. And you can see in stages.
Beautiful. It's just, you just don't see like buildings like this anymore. Like the fact that, because obviously you do, like in the old churches and the old buildings, you see it, but to see it kind of recreated in modern times. You just don't see stuff like this built anymore.
No. And so they got like a $26 million payout, right? And apparently that was underinsured. But definitely we were like the stone, burning through their budget, but like, and they were a bit upset that we were doing, somehow my boss just sold it to them. No, we have to do it the old school medieval way. So, all right, it takes a bit longer, but you get it. But like,
that's awesome.
I'll just show you this. I actually chipped this stone and I sort of super glued it back together. No one will ever know or see. Well, maybe someone might know now, but no one's going to ever see this, obviously, from like 10 meters down below, right? But this stone has what I call the unholy trinity, as in it's heavy, it's awkward, and it's delicate. And I broke a few stones like that. I actually, I might as well out myself. I'll go back to the fancy window. So here, I snapped this off as well when we were putting this in. And this stone here, you can't really see I'll go out a bit more. But this here is about $5,000. This is about $5,000, just this one stone, right? And it just took about a month or so to carve, right? I watched all of these stones getting carved, but I didn't physically carve any of these. But I did doctor each of them to fit them in the 3D jigsaw puzzle. I did carve some of these types of arch stones, but not in this structure. Anyway, I'll go back quickly to where I was at. And that's the inside of the church with some of the stones that I carved. So that's that.
So beautiful. Wow. It's so interesting, just seeing this vast array of knowledge that you have and skills that you have in different things. And I always say it's like the things that you're meant to be doing, you kind of just fall into like that. You're like, I was doing it for a year and then they gave me this huge job and like, what incredible work. And it's like, when you're meant to be doing something, it will just like fall in your lap.
Yeah. And so I didn't question. I was like, I was in the right place, right time. This is meant to be but that work that's why I don't do stonemasonry full time. Like, because I'm only interested. So that genre of stonemasonry is called monumental stonemasonry, the high end, geometrically perfect stone. You obviously don't see that. You only see it in churches or really rich people's houses. So there's no market. There's barely any market for it. And that's the only stonemason that really introduced me to the sacred geometry, cool stuff. But, the other stonemasonry that I do is a bit more rustic, shall we say. But I would love to incorporate their skills. Like I said, I'm the only person alive in this country that's built one of those in its entirety. But I'll never get that opportunity again, right? Unless another church gets Molotoved, right? So I know that. And that structure that I was showing you that I built at my dad's, the reciprocal frame roof, I actually got all this waste stone and I was going to make an arch in that as well, but that's going to take a long time and my dad will probably sell the property before then. But I always look for wherever, I can use those skills. But unfortunately, my mind is attracted to things that, I'll be careful with my words because I don't want to manifest this into the future. But I've been very frustrated with, I'm attracted to things that are very hard to make money from. Making music, doing high-end stonemasonry, permaculture, garden design. I felt cursed for a long time. Like, what am I doing? Why is my mind attracted to this stuff that's really hard to make money from? But anyway, it's going to change. Things are going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you never know where it could lead you eventually. Like you might have all these things and not making money from actually doing them, but then you might start teaching that and make it, you know what I mean? Like, and that's going to bring in the abundance. Like, you just never know where, because I think especially when you have such, I would say like even though you've got a very wide set of skills, it is also quite specific. And it's not something that like everyone's gonna kind of do. Like, I think you've definitely got to be called to it and be very skillful, because the things that you're into, like, I don't think just anyone can like pick up some of those certain skills. And I actually just wanted to ask you too, so before we finish, because I know that you kind of work in like landscaping and stuff, and I mean, because you dabble in a bit of everything, but when you work for people doing that, like, how do you incorporate like all these, because I know that you kind of bring in some of the sacred geometry and you douse for where things should go. Like, how do you do that when you're working for people?
So it's only been in the last year or so that I've incorporated geomancy, like stone alignment and earth divination, into permaculture design. And that's from a client. Again, another person that saw something in me that I didn't yet see in myself. She's like, Linton, I want to spend, because I camped for 2 days at their property, and she's like, I want to spend half a day with you. I know this place has some harmonic spaces. I want you to find them. So, I found these vortexes. I did my whole thing, and I said what each one's for. This is good for ceremony. This is good. So I've only started doing that, and it's been very selective. And then I worked for a landscaping company briefly, and I was telling the boss all this stuff, and telling her where the ley lines were, where she could, plant trees and have other things and features. So I did have all these other photos, which I couldn't find, where I have some of that in action, and maybe another time I can send it to you or whatever. But I do have examples of that, just not with me. So like I said in my bio, wherever my passions intersect, that's where I want to be. So I also incorporate that into where I throw outdoor events. So where you situate the DJ stage, where you situate the sound stage, where you situate the audience. So my ultimate pie in the sky dream project would be to have, a performance space that's on a ley line with stone carvings and geomancy all around it, and with edible and medicinal gardens surrounding it, and then having it as a healing and ceremonial space, right?
Oh, beautiful.
And what I'm doing at my dad's, that's just a prototype for what I'd like to do on a larger scale. People are like, oh, well, you're already working on a big scale, but that's just, my dad just gave me that to just play around with, but I documented it because I had a feeling that I'd never live there, and I had a feeling that I might not finish it. So it's just to say, hey, I'm capable of this with a good enough budget. Let's talk, or let's do this higher. Let's do it at a much higher level where there's more resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know who's going to buy that property and potentially use that space and what they're going to use it for. You just never know what it's meant to be for.
Yeah.
You never know who listens to the show. Maybe there's somebody listening now or in the future that's interested and hired you for some work, that feels the inspiration, that values these, I don't even want to say archaic, but just this higher minded form of building and structure and design and intention. And because it's such a valuable skill. And I think we're going more that way. I know it piqued an interest in me. I'm not nearly the level of precision and really good skill that you can tell you put a lot of time and precision into what you're doing. And it's inspirational, but the meaning that you put into it as well, it goes beyond money. This is something that I believe has healing properties to it. The intention to it, I think, is going to affect people, could affect people generationally.
And I'm just going to say this now, because I'm if this comes to fruition, I'm I called it, guys. I can see you, Linton, doing workshops on this and teaching this to other people to actually, because I think that's the way that we're moving to now. We are moving away from this top-down, control structures that we've all been so conditioned to live under. And we are moving away from just outsourcing everything. And don't get me wrong, it's sometimes you do need to bring in people that have the right skills for what you want to do. But I think it's also about, we're moving into a different time where people are taking full self-responsibility and they're learning new things. And and so for people that are interested in this stuff, I could totally see you doing workshops and actually teaching this to people. And like I said, that could be the way that you make money from this. It might not be actually doing it for others as such, but teaching people how they can incorporate these different things into their buildings or their work if they're builders or whatever it may be. So if that comes to fruition, I called it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, I do like teaching and sharing, obviously, my knowledge. So that's fun too.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a good episode for that. I mean, it's so inspirational to see those windows that you carved, and I'm still kind of spinning out on it. I'm just dude, I was under the impression that we couldn't build those anymore. And
that's what people told me, no one knows how to do this anymore. And when I was in midway through building that window, right, just before COVID happened, right, I was driving up to Queensland, across two states, for those that don't know Australia. And I had because I knew, long story short, I knew in 2017 the global lockdowns were coming in 2020, and that's why I live where I live on the outskirts of the city, because I didn't want to get locked down then. And I warned a bunch of people, but anyway, I knew crossing state borders. I knew I'm not going to be able to do this soon. I know I'm not going to be able to do this soon, and as we saw, we were.
Yeah.
But I went to a cathedral in Goulburn, and it was an amazing one. And they had a window even more grand than that one that I worked on. And they're it's in disrepair, and no one knows how to do this anymore. I'm I'm actually literally doing this right now with a bunch of people that know more than me as well. But like, yes, there are people that know how to do this, you know? So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I knew it was going to be a great chat, but it was amazing. And I think we'll definitely have you on in the future because, again, you know so much about so many different things. I'm sure we could, talk for hours on or even just on these topics, and so much more.
Yeah.
So for anyone that is interested in the work that you do or wants to get in touch with you, for any reason, they might want to have you on their show because, again, you've just got so much knowledge to share. How can people get in touch with you?
So I'm old school. I'm not on social media. I guess it's like phone number or email. So I can provide those like now or later, whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, okay, cool. We'll just, flick us your email and we'll definitely pop that in the show notes. Yeah. And that way people can get in touch with you.
And what about your music? Where can people find your music?
Oh, yeah. That's what I wanted to ask that too.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you guys a link to my albums. Both albums are not released, so you can have a listen. And maybe, who knows, maybe I could even just chuck a link up for anyone that's interested to hear it before it gets released. I don't care. I'm sending the link to anyone. So if you want, I can put that in the show notes. But I will eventually, when I release it properly, it will be on Spotify, YouTube, etc. But at the moment, it's not released.
Awesome.
So, I'll send the link. Anyone wants to listen? Yeah, cool.
Amazing.
Nice. Well, when you do release it, I think we should have you back on and do a little launch listen or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually going to say, because I just had to shorten the bio, but in the bio that you sent me, you explained that, that you were working with someone that's a light language vocalist. And it's really interesting because I had no idea what light language was literally until like a couple of months ago. And it's actually quite fascinating. So I think, we'll definitely have you on again when you release that and we can go more into your process of making music and the light language stuff, which is fascinating. And who knows, like I said, we could talk for hours.
Looking forward to that.
So I can send you those links and have a listen, and then that might generate some ideas for sure.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Linton, and to our listeners, stay tuned for the wrap up.
How awesome was that?
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I really liked the visual elements of it and being able to see what Linton was up to and what he was building. And as he was describing it, it was, it's good to see people that don't just talk a good game, but they actually are producing something in the real world that you can see tangible results from.
Yeah, they walk the walk.
Yeah.
I actually think I'm going to listen back to that episode again and take notes. There's so many tidbits of information that I was just like, because we recorded this at the end of last year, so it's been a few months, and even just listening back, in post-production, and I didn't listen to every single minute of it, but there was just so many things. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot we spoke about that. Oh yeah, he knows so much about this. So I feel like I've got to go back and listen to it in its entirety and like take notes because I learned so much during this interview.
Yeah. Well, if you want to work with Linton in the future, if you've got land and you want to develop it and do some permaculture or do some design using sacred geometry, I highly encourage that. There's something inspirational about building something the old way, an older method, bringing back these older building methods. If it takes more time, but it's worth it, and the energy that it holds is palpable, it's different. And going forward, I think we'll start seeing a lot more of this. I built a greenhouse back at my parents' house in Wyoming, and I did a similar thing where I brought back old mortise and tenon timber frame type building, the stuff that the Amish were known for. And the actual architecture style is a Gothic arbor. And it consumed me for about a year. I just was so focused on building that. It was so inspiring. And to see other people like-minded, like Linton, doing similar things, but with probably a bit more skill and talent, and the design using sacred geometry. If you don't have something like this on your land and you want to, I definitely recommend reaching out to them and starting a conversation about how to make that happen.
Yeah, so for anyone that does want to reach out to Linton, we'll put his contact details in the show notes. And we've also included, he was generous enough to send his SoundCloud links for his latest albums. I believe one's mostly finished, and then one he's just looking for some more vocalists to get on some of the tracks. But we had to listen to it. And again, just very interesting. It's done with so much intention that you can hear these little sounds and you'll see like the numbers, how long the songs are and little things. So it's really interesting. Highly recommend giving them a listen, and definitely reach out to him if you're keen to work with him or just drop him a line.
Yeah. Give us a shout out in the comments. What do you think of the music? What do you think of the episode? Anytime you comment and share this, it helps more people see it and hopefully experience inspiration and awakening of their own to be inspired and go out and learn new skills and apply it and create something beautiful.
Absolutely. So for next week, we've got another awesome episode lined up with our beautiful friend, Sophie Fletcher, who is the wife of Erasmus, who we've had on the podcast. I say we, but I didn't actually do that interview, which I'm kind of gutted about, but we are going to get Erasmus and Sophie on for an episode together in the future. So definitely stay tuned for that. And yeah, we're going to talk all things nervous system with Sophie next week. So can't wait to get that one out. Stay tuned and we'll see you next time.
See you then.